Rome was becoming the dominant military power in Italy, but at sea, it was still learning how to fight. And in 260 BCE, one Roman consul saw what appeared to be an extraordinary opportunity. Sail to the Lipari Islands, seize an exposed Carthaginian position, and win glory for himself. Instead, he sailed 17 Roman warships directly into a trap. By the next morning, Rome had lost the entire squadron and its commander had been captured. This was one of the great humiliations of the Roman Navy. But what happened afterward would help change the balance of power in the Mediterranean. This is the disaster at Lipara. By the middle of the 3rd century BCE, Rome had become a formidable land power. At sea, however, the balance of power looked very different. For centuries, Carthage had built its wealth and influence around maritime commerce. Its naval power protected a network extending across North Africa, Sardinia, Corsica, Sicily, and into the Iberian Peninsula. Its sailors were experienced, its shipbuilding infrastructure was sophisticated, and its warships were designed for the fast, maneuverable naval warfare of the ancient Mediterranean. Rome was still catching up. That does not mean, as Roman tradition sometimes suggested, that the Romans knew virtually nothing about ships. As I've done in my research, I found that Rome had lived alongside maritime peoples for centuries, possessed river and coastal vessels, and had incorporated experienced Italian Greek sailors into their growing naval establishment. Nevertheless, Carthage remained in another league. The difference became critical when the First Punic War began in 264 BCE. At its heart was Sicily. Rome and Carthage had previously maintained diplomatic relations, but their competing involvement around the strategic city of Messana transformed a regional dispute into a war that will ultimately last 23 years. And Rome quickly discovered a strategic problem. Defeating Carthage meant confronting a power that could strike from the sea. While Rome prepared its new fleet, Carthaginian ships operated with considerable freedom along Sicily and the Italian coastline. Roman sailors were reportedly even trained on rowing benches ashore while their ships were being prepared. The Romans were learning. But in 260 BCE, they were about to receive a particularly brutal lesson. The opportunity appeared at Lipara, in the island group off Sicily's northern coast. The Carthaginians had been using the islands as a staging area for operations against Roman territory. Then reports arrived that they had abandoned Lipara. For the Roman consul Gaius Cornelius Scipio, the temptation was enormous. Here was an opportunity to seize an important position and perhaps secure personal glory in the process. Scipio personally took command of a scouting force of 17 ships and sailed for Lipara. When he arrived, there was no Carthaginian fleet waiting for him. Everything seemed to confirm the intelligence. So, Scipio anchored a squadron. The majority of his men went ashore for the night. Only skeletal crews remained aboard the Roman ships. And then the situation changed completely. The Carthaginian commander, Boodes, arrived with approximately 20 warships. The Romans had placed themselves in an almost impossible tactical position. Their ships were anchored. Many of their men were ashore. And an experienced enemy naval force had suddenly appeared around them. There were no glorious battle. There was barely a battle at all. As has been described, later that evening, Punic naval commander and senator Boodes returned, capturing the entire Roman squadron, including Consul Scipio. 17 ships gone, a Roman consul captured, and one of Rome's earliest major naval operations had ended in humiliation. The episode even left Scipio with the mocking cognomen Asina, the donkey. Yet Lipara was more than an embarrassing anecdote. It exposed something that would appear repeatedly throughout military history. Information is not the same thing as intelligence. The Carthaginians appear to have abandoned Lipara. Scipio treated that appearance as fact. Then he compounded the mistake by placing his force in a position from which it could not respond effectively when circumstances changed. Rome's first naval disaster was therefore not simply about inexperienced sailors, it was also a failure of command. For another state, Lipara might have confirmed that challenging Carthage at sea was simply too dangerous. Rome responded differently. Scipio's capture transferred command to his co-consul, Gaius Duilius, an experienced army commander who now inherited Rome's naval problem. And almost immediately, the situation began changing. While Duilius moved south with the main Roman fleet, a Carthaginian squadron under another commander named Hannibal, not the famous Hannibal Barca, unexpectedly encountered the Romans. This time, the result was different. The Carthaginians escaped, but not without losing several ships. Rome had achieved its first small success at sea. Then came Mylae. There, Rome confronted a Carthaginian fleet of roughly comparable size. But the Romans had introduced something new, the corvus, a large boarding bridge that could be dropped into an enemy vessel, locking the ships together and allowing Roman infantry to storm across. Rome was effectively transforming naval combat into something its soldiers understood, a land battle fought on wooden decks. At Mylae, the Carthaginians discovered the consequences. Roman troops boarded their ships and overwhelmed their crews. Rome captured more than 30 Carthaginian vessels and sank others. The civilization humiliated at Lipara had achieved a major naval victory soon afterward. That is what makes Lipara important. Rome did not become a Mediterranean naval power because it avoided failure. It became one because failure did not stop adaptation. Lipara exposed Roman inexperience, poor judgment, and dangerous overconfidence. Mylae demonstrated what could happen when those weaknesses were answered with innovation. 4 years later, Rome would confront Carthage again at Gnaeus in what would become one of the largest naval battles of the ancient world. The Romans were no longer simply learning how to survive at sea, they were learning how to dominate it. And the road towards that transformation passed directly through one forgotten humiliation at Lipara. Lipara was a small engagement compared with the enormous naval battles that would follow during the First Punic War, but its importance was far greater than the number of ships involved. Rome entered Lipara eager to prove that its growing power on land could be translated to sea. Instead, one commander's desire for opportunity and glory left 17 Roman ships exposed, their crews divided, and a Roman consul in Carthaginian captivity. The humiliation revealed how far Rome still had to go. Carthage possessed generations of maritime experience. Rome possessed ambition. At Lipara, experience won. But Rome's response to failure is what ultimately makes the story important. The Romans did not abandon the sea. They learned. Command passed to Gaius Duilius. New tactics followed. The corvus allowed Roman infantry to turn naval engagements into something much closer to the kind of combat Rome already understood. And at Mylae, the results were dramatically different. The same Roman navy that had been humiliated at Lipara would soon defeat the greatest maritime power in the Western Mediterranean. That transformation offers a large lesson that extends far beyond ancient naval warfare. Military failure does not necessarily come from lacking resources, courage, or ambition. Sometimes it comes from misunderstanding the environment in which you are fighting. Scipio saw an opportunity at Lipara. What he failed to recognize was how vulnerable that opportunity had made him. Rome survived the mistake because it adapted. Carthage would soon discover just how dangerous an adaptable Rome could become. Lipara was not the battle that made Rome master of the Mediterranean. It was the disaster that taught Rome what it would take to become one. I'm Michael Stroud, and remember, history matters because people matter. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it if you would like the video, subscribe to History with Michael Stroud, share it with someone who enjoys history, and leave a comment below. Every like, comment, and share helps more people discover the channel and allows me to continue bringing these stories to life. I release new history documentaries every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, so be sure to click the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. For more historical articles, speaking information, and my latest research, please visit michaelgstroud.com. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.